This is Victoria Fragoso, and you are listening to Beyond the Plateau, a High Plateau Productions podcast. And we have today our special guest, David Fernandez. How are you doing, David?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. This is actually a bit of a treat. So thank you for offering to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you're used to being on the other side of these questions, so I'm very excited to speak with you today a lot about music and what you do with High Plateau. So a lot of feedback. I actually reached out to some artists that you've worked with in the past who were very willing to give me some. Yes, no. All of the sentiments they shared were, very common. That you're generous with your time. Many wonder if you even sleep. And really celebrating like how passionate and dedicated you are to supporting indie artists. So maybe you could give us a little bit of background regarding your history in the music business.
So yeah, I guess I would start off with I always tell this to a lot of people is that, depending on what year you were born in, you are introduced to a lot of different sort of music. So I'm going to be 100% biased that, I was born in 1974. So I grew up with a lot of changes in the music. So, I got, 80s pop, I got 80s English pop, I got 80s synth alternative. And then moving into, the late 80s, early 90s, where rap music kind of got mainstream, where we were, things that you would hear underground or, you'd have to find at a swap meet or whatnot. You never got really introduced to that kind of music, then grunge music, alternative music. The entire metamorphosis of country music where, late 80s, it's like Clint Black, Garth Brooks, Trisha Yearwood, Tanya Tucker, Brooks and Dunn. And then country music kind of like branching off and turning into kind of like mainstream. Then we had boy bands. And then, we get into the 2000s and, now we're on full on pop music where, you really can't, I can't decipher of how some of this music gets on top 40 or whatnot, and then we're moving into like 2010s and you're seeing the entire switch of how people are listening to music, that in this day of age, any Tom, Dick or Jane could put a song on Spotify. If you have GarageBand or if you have, any sort of version, anybody can do anything now. So I was very fortunate to grow up in a very, diverse music background of what I was listening to. And I can't say for sure that my parents had any influence because I have two brothers and a little sister, and we played baseball, soccer, and football, so there was constant, running around. But I do remember that I was the only kid in the 7th grade that was listening to Eddie Money. riding my bike, or, blasting Duran Duran or any of those sort of things. So, I always wanted, to be a part of music because music played an important part in my life. I'll do the total cliche that, it's gotten me through good times. It's gotten me through bad times. When I've been down and low, I put a set of headphones on and went out and, listened to music. So I would say on the musical front, though, is that there's two things that happened when I was 17. One, my dad's ex-girlfriend at the time, she was supposed to take my dad to go see a musical, and she called me up and said, "Do you want to go see a musical?" And I was like, yuck, a musical. And it was a regional production of Jesus Christ Superstar. The wonderful Andrew Lloyd Webber. I believe it might have been his second, maybe his third musical that he wrote with Tim Rice. And I was floored by it. I was like, this is amazing. So then I started to listening to orchestrations and opera and musicals. And then, the big hit to me was being introduced to Nick Drake, who is by far one of my favorite singers of all time. Tragically passed away in 1970 or 1971. And for those of you who have never listened to Nick Drake, you could take any of his music from 69, 70, and 71, and put it in any decade after that, and the sound in his music sounds like it was made for the time period. That's how dynamic of a songwriter he was. So that started to really get me into music and thinking more about music and what's behind music. Nick Drake was a master of alternate tunings. I believe, if anybody really like researches everything, I think Nick Drake was one of the first ones to really do some really wonky tunings on the guitar that to this day I've broken several strings trying to get down to a tuning that he's at and whatnot. So went through college. My actual real background was I was a labor organizer for almost 17 years for a labor union down in San Diego. And that is actually, I'm going to go backwards and forwards, and that's actually kind of helped, where I'm at right now, because all I did was negotiate contracts and look at finances and so on and so forth. So I've had several friends throughout my life in bands, some name bands that will go unnamed, and some in regular garage bands. And in 2016, I started to help out with a band, and it grew into something a lot bigger. And before you knew it, I was providing a lot of input for a musician. And at that time, I was up in Seattle, and we were doing a show up in Seattle. And Shannon Cook, who who has helped tremendously with High Plateau Productions, her and I were sitting there, and I just started having a discussional talk inside of my head, and it turned into an out loud sort of thing of like, let's try. I want to try to change how people see music, how people listen to music, to try to bring something a little bit different. Back in 2013, where High Plateau Productions, the first seed was actually planted, was there's a wonderful musician out of Denton, Texas. His name is Will Johnson, and his band is called Centromatic. And I'm just a huge fan of Centromatic and Will Johnson's music. And Will Johnson did a living room tour. And a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of mine said, hey, I have a ticket to this concert. And I'm like, where's it at? It's at this person's living room in Pasadena. And I was like, oh my gosh. What? And they're like, it's with someone that you know and that you like. And I'm like, well, send me the information. So I went to this living room show with Will Johnson, and there was 35 of us in the living room, and Will basically broke down every song that he sang, talked about the tunings, talked about the songwriting behind it, where it was this totally intimate access that you would never get in a million years at a regular live venue. It just doesn't happen, because these days we go to a live show, and whether you're the opening band or the closing band, you're powering through 10 songs or 9 songs, 8 songs, getting off the stage, moving on to the next city. So that first seed was planted, and if Will, ends up listening to this, is that, Will Johnson is very, very responsible for High Plateau Productions. And I have said that to him several times, is that it was just a way for me to discover music and to listen to music. So once I started building some relationships and everything, and we were doing some living room shows with some bands and helping them out and everything, and it was just kind of not a side project, but it was more of, a side project. But in the back of my mind, it was like, if I got a good group of musicians together, if I got them thinking in a collective sort of way of, my music is important to me, and it's sometimes not all about monetizing. Sometimes it's all about reaching out to the fan base, reaching out to different consumers, but ultimately getting back to what, you as a musician, that, I know you and I've had this conversation of why you love to be a musician. You love your music. You love singing. You love playing the piano. You love being around other musicians. And there's rough days and great days and the highs and lows and all that. But at the end of the day, it's that passion. And I truly think that Spotify and Apple Music and Deezer, Amazon Music, all of those streaming platforms, it's taken a bit of the soul away from musicians because it took away CD sales in general.
Right.
So that was a huge hit, I think, to, the independent artists that, they would sign up to go play at their local coffee house and maybe get a cup of coffee out of it or a baguette, after the show.
Yeah.
But they would know that they would sell, $100 or $150 in merch and CD sales and, feel good about what they were doing or whatnot. And that's been totally wiped off the face of the earth. So I'm digressing. So I'm sitting up there in Seattle and I'm thinking, I think I can do this. I think I am passionate enough and understand what I want to see as a music consumer. And, if we just put a little bit of effort and voila. So the whole live stream stuff was just made out of accident. Just because I was on such a roll, of having all of these venues across America, having these relationships in the UK, having relationships in Canada. I built relationships down in Mexico City, so these little pockets across the world where these people were like, yes, I'm on board with you. Let's have your musicians come here. Let's have them play. And, they can keep their ticket sales. And you're like, yeah, because that's what it should be all about. Even if you're a venue owner, is that if you truly love music, and if you're truly, passionate about, wanting to make a difference in the music industry, open up your house, open up your stage, open up your space and let people play. And, you can keep the food and the beer sales and all that other wonderful stuff that goes with that. But at the end of the day, it goes back to my labor organizing is, a fair wage, human dignity, health and welfare benefits for everybody is that these musicians are giving everything to their trade and the return on it is not the greatest. So long story short, 2020, January of 2020, I'm up in Seattle with a band called Horse Feathers out of Portland. Awesome band. And, sitting there with Justin and talking with Justin, brainstorming live streaming, what it might be, what it may not be. And then COVID hits and voila. So High Plateau Productions.
Here we are.
High Plateau Productions morphed into this live stream platform, that lives on its own server, that we stream in high fidelity. We have a cool chat room. And at the end of the day, the artists that stream with us keep 100% of their proceeds. And that's where the most important thing comes into all of this, because it gets me emotional and teary-eyed and everything to, whether someone makes $100 off the show, whether they make $1,000 off the show, it's more about them building the relationships with me and building relationships with all the other great bands or musicians that we've streamed on the live stream. So that was probably a little bit more than what, but that's basically the background of, my love for music is just basically being born in 1974. We can blame that damn year. And just being introduced to so many different types of music throughout these years. And then just getting it back down to basics is that, if you're a truck driver, you get paid to be a truck driver. If you're a bagger, you get paid to be a bagger. And we have somehow skipped over the last 7 years, maybe 6 years, that musicians seem to get paid for what they're doing. And I'm at fault with this. You're at fault with this. Everyone's at fault with this. That we have this human need to post our stuff on Instagram and to post our stuff on Facebook, because that's what society wants right now. Is that in order for your fan base to stay in tune, is that you have to give them content. But at the end of the day, it's not monetizing anything. And then so then when we go and try to monetize, you get the hands up in the air. They're like, why should I pay for something? You do live streams and you do this and you do this. And so just really one live stream at a time or one musician contact at one time, just instructing them and telling them that it's okay. It's okay to monetize things. It really is okay to do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just in awe. I mean, that's fantastic. And I think it's so, your story about like, I mean, everybody starts somewhere. And so to hear of all of the influences that went into and now create such an amazing experience that I've had with High Plateau Productions, that other artists have had, that the audience has when they watch these live shows online, and that music is back in their lives, that live performance, that live touch, having the artists talk to you about what inspired their songs, connecting with, you know, their content as well as their authenticity. I mean, one of the things that some of the artists were really grateful for was that, yeah, you did instill confidence in them. You told them it was okay to monetize. And even if it was only $100, it was still an audience that needed to hear that music. I think it's really great what you're doing to educate the artists. How does that in turn help you to educate the audience?
So, whenever an artist reaches out to me and asks to live stream, you know, people are like, people have actually asked, they're like, do you pick and choose? And I'm like, if anyone has, if I can say this in a term, if someone has the balls to live stream themselves, to pick up their guitar and do, I will fit you in my calendar. I will take the time out of my time to walk you through OBS, to walk you through how to stream on your phone, because to me, that's passion right there. And if I can instill that one tad bit of passion in someone, that will get them to, because you never know what their next single is going to be like, or you don't know, you know, the conversation that I had with them or you had with them or someone else, that they're like, yeah, I can do this. I can instill confidence into myself and do that. So there's not a vetting process, but literally I walk them through of like, okay, let's look at your link tree. Let's look at what you're doing. Let's look at your social media and what is your presence. Okay, now let's try to tweak this. Let's try to tweak this. And at the same time, you know, what I need you to do is that you have to go back down to the basics. And when we start selling tickets and you start posting, is that you really have to tell folks that, one, there's a company out there, and there are a couple other companies out there, that's going to give me 100% of these proceeds. Two, for less than a cup of coffee, less than a number 7 at McDonald's, less than, you know, all these things that I can think about, is that that patron's money is going directly to them. And once again, we can all give up a cup of coffee. We can all give up a Big Mac meal. I mean, so there's really no excuse other than the fact, as musicians or me as a promoter or me as a manager, just being lazy and not really getting that word out there, is that, you know, it can be done. Put yourself out there, have confidence in your music, have confidence in yourself, and then just push forward. You said something a little bit earlier, is that one of the greatest things that I can see in a chat room when we're doing a live stream is when someone says, best $4 I've ever spent, or best $5 I've ever spent. And at the end of the day, the common person might look at it and they're like, well, it's just $4. No, we just made an impact on a consumer that follows this artist. And hopefully you plug or, you know, embed that one little thing in their head of like, you know, these sort of things are important. You know, buying people's music on Bandcamp. You know, if there's merch out there, you know, buying a T-shirt from them, all of those things translate to these really cool and great things. And the more I can empower, you know, because I don't have all the answers. I really don't. You could talk to the girls who I'm managing now. Is that, you know, we have to brainstorm constantly because the music industry is changing on you know, on a daily, actually sometimes on a minute basis. But those are the things that really, you know, have taught me and has made me feel more and more comfortable of having some great conversations. And sometimes those conversations with younger artists, it doesn't sit well with them. They're like, well, I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to tell people that. And I'm like, then you can continue to put your stuff on Instagram and YouTube for free. And Mark Zuckerberg can go buy himself a new jet with the money that you're giving to Instagram and Facebook, because at the end of the day, they're just selling ad space, and they could care less.
It's that's a really good point. And it's, I mean, you've seen how when there wasn't social media and now there is social media, and how that's changed everybody's perspective of music and consuming in general. What would you say? A lot of artists that I've talked to about this, and many artists experience imposter syndrome that keeps them from sharing themselves. They doubt their abilities and feel like a fraud. I mean, what has been your experience with this, even with the girls that you manage? What do you feel like artists can do to combat this?
See, that's the whole tricky thing, because I'm going to tell you one of the worst things, and I know Abigail, and I know Paris, and I know Francesca, who I manage now. Mm-hmm. I know all three of them will listen to this, and one of the worst things that anybody can do is look at your Spotify for artists when you have a new release come out. You know, Abigail and Paris live in the UK, you know, so at any given time of the year, we're either 7 hours or 9 hours difference from each other, depending on the time change. And how many text messages I've got at 3:00 in the morning of like, there's nobody listening to my music, or, you know, what happened? And that is hard. That's got to be extremely difficult as a musician. And I have felt that, and you know, I've teared up with, you know, Paris and with Abigail about those sort of things of like, I get that. It totally, you put all this time and all this effort and, you know, learning Logic or first, you know, learning GarageBand and then graduating to the $200 program of Logic, and then thinking that, you know, this bangs, this is a great song. And then it doesn't get listened to. So society has actually already put that burden on these young musicians, and even, you know, musicians that I grew up with, that I can go to their Spotify account and I know that they had records that went gold and almost platinum, and they only have 3,000 followers on Spotify. They just never made that transition. So it's not, I would not use the word coddling, and I wouldn't use, you know, stroking or anything, but it's just constant reminders. And, you know, is that there's an audience for you, and your music is good, and you just continue to fight that and continue to fight that. You know, and then always just have great communication with other musicians, and you know, try to bounce those ideas off of each other. I know in our the January live stream group that we did will always have a very special place in my heart, because that was such a lively group in the chat room, and bouncing ideas off each other, and you know, seeing how that works and everything. And that's what I tell these younger musicians, is that you not have to be friendly with other musicians, but you need to know other musicians. You need to understand what Spotify is doing, what Apple Music is doing, what different playlists do and whatnot. And, you know, my thing is this, is that if one person listens to your song, that's a good thing. And that should drive you to make more music. You know, at the end of the day, we're already behind the 8 ball because of all the data and analyticals that are out there. So when I was Paris's age or Abigail's age, you know, we would pick up the new Rolling Stone magazine, and on the very back end of it, it would have the top 100 in, you know, different categories, and it would have a little thing next to it of how many units were moved, and that was it. But now we're worrying about Instagram followers, Spotify followers, Twitter followers,
likes,
how many likes you get, who reposted this, who saved this, am I posting too much, am I not posting enough, where should I be posting today, what is the flavor? And so, you know, for a younger musician starting off who's not under management or even is under management, it's getting a calendar under control, taking a look at a calendar. And I tell Paris and Abigail and Francesca that we're going to break everything up in quarters, 3, 3, 3, 3. You know, every 3 months, we're going to put a plan together and what's on the horizon, and we're going to try to stick to that. And then we're going to try to stick to one platform. You know, what are we going to concentrate on this quarter for? Is it going to be Instagram? Is it going to be Spotify? And because there's just so much going on right now and out there, it's way too much. It's way too much to juggle for anybody. So, and that's where the frustration part kicks in. So as a younger musician or starting off musician, if you can start with one platform, one social media platform, and put your effort into that, and then move off of it in 3 months and move on to a different one.
Wow. I mean, I think that's all really, really good feedback, because I'm hearing a lot about engaging and building a community with your fellow artists, because when you are feeling down, someone else is going to be there to support you. When they're feeling down, you're going to be there to support them. Not just connecting with them, with other artists via social media, but also with your audience, and finding your audience, how important that is to build. I mean, I can't tell you what it means to me as an artist to hear that somebody, even if just it's a little comment, but somebody said, this made my day. That is one little thing to keep me going, to push me forward, to get me through one more day. And so I hear what you're saying, and building that community, because we do have to support each other as artists, as consumers. Like you said, we're all in some way responsible for how this industry has come to this point,
right.
How we're really all supporting the 1%, but what about everybody else that we truly do believe in, and does have a voice worth hearing? What do you feel like live performance does with that experience? How, because that's, you know, just one aspect of your persona, what you're putting out there. How about like the live performances, the single releases? How does that play in?
So behind the scenes now, and I would offer this, and I know a lot of the artists that we've streamed will hear this. And what I'm offering now is that as I'm now managing musicians back again, is that I'm not curtailing the live streams, but they're less now, just because I'm concentrating a lot more effort on, you know, managing people's careers and whatnot. And I think that's important to those artists that I'm managing now, that I'm not doing, you know, 35 live streams in a month. And, you know,
no, absolutely.
You know, people sometimes don't, it is literally like doing a sound check with them 3 days or 4 days beforehand.
Right.
And then a sound check an hour before their show. And then I literally have to, you know, I've said this to you, and I've said this to a lot of people, is that there's only one thing that can go right in a live stream, is that it streams. Other than that, there's a gazillion other things that are going on and going wrong, you know, and I'm trying to look at servers, and I'm making sure that, you know, levels are great and everything. But what some artists now have reached out to me is to start preparing, you know, for live shows, you know, of me doing a private session with them. You know, it's not advertised anywhere on our website. It's not advertised anywhere. It's just them doing an entire set again, you know, getting used to, you know, speeding through 4 songs or 5 songs or 6 songs, you know, and getting used to, you know, not that full dialogue anymore, you know, what a live stream, you know, allows, where you're chatting and talking about the music. We have to start getting used to what, you know, that was. I was very, very fortunate a few weeks ago that I got to see Nadia and Natalie an actual live show. It was almost live. I was there, but they were in a different room about maybe 100 feet from me, and then we were watching it on a big screen. But even those sort of interactions is where, you know, we're starting to get back into it. So I know it's a little bit different from state to state, but here in California, we think that we're going to be at maybe 20% capacity here really soon. That's some are small venues. And then that begs, you know, the next question with some of the artists that have reached out to me and said, you know, can you help me get something booked and everything? And you have to have that honest dialogue of like, is it worth playing in front of only 15 people or 20 people in a small cap space? And you do the pros and cons and everything. And what I'm recommending for anybody right now is that if they can get a live gig, and if they're comfortable with COVID status and whatnot, is that I would take it. I would really take it, because it's going to be a dog eat world once these live venues open up, because you have a lot of really named bands that haven't done jack shit the last year and a half, who are used to playing in 600, 1,000 cap spaces, which are now going to get booked into the 200 and 250 spaces, because there's going to be such a, of like, and it's going to slowly push out that independent artist that was able to book something. So it's just starting to prep.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's just starting to, I'm starting to prep some artists that, are reaching out to me of like, just start getting used to it. Pick your best 4 songs or 5 songs, power through them, and working out the kinks and everything. So, but yeah, I'm excited for live shows. We just announced Abigail's show in London got sold out, and Paris's show in London just it's almost sold out. And I think where Abigail's playing, it's going to be a 60 cap space room, and where Paris is playing, it's going to be an 80. So fully diminished and everything. But I'm excited, and I urge anybody who's listening to this to, if they need practice or help and looking for gigs and whatnot, let's do it, because live music needs to come back.
That's so great. And yes, it really does. I think we're all to that point. We just want to play. We want that interaction again. We want to see the people's reactions. And yes, Willowcrest did let us know how heartwarming it was for you to drive all the way from San Diego to LA just to support them, and Natalie and Nadia. And that shows you right there, like what this means to you.
Yeah, these I think we've done, I don't know, maybe close to 200 live streams since this all started, and each and every one of these live streams has been extremely important in the relationships that I've built. And some of the artists is that I there wasn't an opportunity to get to know them. They just wanted to live stream, but I would say 30 to 40% of them, still reach out to me, shoot me a text, when they have a new release or whatnot, I will help promote it for them. And that those are those lasting relationships that, you want. This is the hardest thing to do, and the easiest thing to do is that you want good people in your corner as a musician. You don't want the person that constantly has their hand in your pocket or demanding things. You just want good people, and people like Willowcrest and, Nadia, Nadia and I text each other at least 2 or 3 times a week, and bouncing some ideas off each other. And we have, bi-weekly phone calls with each other. Is that, it's just, or just sitting with Natalie before her show, before she played it, just sitting there and talking music and just bouncing those ideas off each other, because those things are important and y'all need it. Some of the folks out there, they're like, I can do this. I'm going to power through this on my own. And literally, folks, maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you could probably walk down to your local venue and whatnot, but there's now multiply that by 20 million of the same people that are doing that, because Spotify and this MacBook that I'm looking at, has changed the way that people can create music. And all it takes is something to go viral on TikTok, and then it seems all of a sudden but we won't talk about those crummy artists sometimes that I see. So
there's just so much out there to try as an artist. It's hard to know like what to do next, where you should focus your time and your energy. But I think you gave a lot of really great ideas, especially for new artists starting out, what to focus on, where to go. But I think, one of the most important things that I took is to create relationships and to build a community where you feel supported and you're supporting other great artists as well, because we should have each other's backs. And in an industry where everyone is almost, this is a quote from another artist, but in an industry where everyone is a utilitarian, your generosity is much appreciated. And anybody who's giving their time to support independent artists. What's 1 or 2 more things that like a listener or consumer can do for their independent artist?
So, I'm a huge fan of Bandcamp. If you're a musician out there and if your music is not on Bandcamp, you're doing yourself a disservice, especially what Bandcamp has done the last year during COVID. That, it seems like they're running it about every 3 weeks, maybe every 4 weeks, but they'll typically have Bandcamp Friday where, every song that you buy on Bandcamp, goes directly to the artist. And people are like, well, I bought the song for them on Apple Music or on, well, Apple Music and iTunes are two different things now. I bought the music on iTunes, and I'm like, you have no idea. They don't get that much money, but you know, if you want that song to breathe and live on your laptop, on your hard drive, buy it from Bandcamp, folks. Just do it. And once again, you're making a huge difference in that artist. But as a consumer, I would still, because I am still a consumer, is that I would make sure that, you know, I'm not saying, you know, to not patron, you know, certain facilities or certain venues or whatnot, but, you know, if you see a living room tour coming through your town, if you see, you know, a band play in a smaller venue and whatnot, or maybe if the tickets are sold on Eventbrite instead of Ticketmaster, you know, those are really good precursors to know that the band is probably getting a lot more money, you know, than, you know, a show that's advertised on Ticketmaster or TalloWeb, whatever they're doing these days. And as a consumer, I always have, you know, that extra cash in my pocket when I go to a show. I just know, even if the t-shirt is not my favorite design, you know, I will still pick up maybe, you know, 4 or 5 vinyl stickers from them, you know, because I will collect those. And, you know, it's just those things of thinking a little bit forward of like, you know, merch is important for artists. Picking up a CD from them is important, you know, even though I think the last 2 cars I bought didn't even have a CD player in the car, you know? So as a consumer, there's those sort of things. And it's supporting the artist. Pre-save. When an artist puts a pre-save up, go pre-save it. It literally takes you 5 seconds to click on their link and pre-save, because that helps move the song through the system, whether it's on, you know, iTunes or Apple Music or Spotify. So as a consumer, don't be lazy about it. If you like the artist and if you like their music, when they put a pre-save up, just go click on it. You're doing them a world of wonders. A world of wonders.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much for, again, just giving your time so generously, because I mean, time, you don't get, and like, there's a limit to how much time you get. So for you to spend your time doing these things for people who truly appreciate it, I mean, it makes a difference in their daily life, not just in their careers. But so what's the best way to get in touch with you? We can find you at highplateauproductions.com, on social media. What's the best way?
I would say either shoot me a direct email at david@highplateauproductions.com, or unfortunately or fortunately, if you talk to my children, if you message me on Instagram at High Plateau Productions, I do pride myself of getting back as quickly as possible. I think those are the sort of things that, you know, I try to instill in my children and, you know, my loved ones around me, of, you know, if somebody contacts you, you know, even if you can't respond to them, just shoot them a message back and say, I'll respond to you later this evening and everything. Because once again, you're trying to instill those little things in their head that there are people that care. And sometimes just getting a prompt response. So I do appreciate you throwing out the social media. We have a Twitter account. It's not used that often. I find it not as useful, but mostly Instagram and David at High Plateau Productions. And if you are an up and coming musician out there and you want to live stream us, and you want to get invited to just view a live stream, you can shoot me a message and I will shoot you over a direct link to one of the live streams coming up that you can actually see what we're doing, because we are doing some damn great things.
Yes.
And I will give you one plug. Victoria's live stream that we did this past Saturday, like, epic beyond epic, that I did not think that you could do an encore the way that they did an encore, but it felt like a regular gig of how you did your encore, that you came back and it was just you for the first song, and then the last song your 2 bandmates, and I'm having visions and like trying to keep back the tears. I'm like, this is like a live show. This is like this is what it's supposed to be like. So
thank you.
they're great. You're great, and once again, if anything that I can do to help you, any other musician out there, or just powwow, and sometimes it just takes a powwow, you know, to do that. I do want to leave you out with this, and I didn't touch this, and then we'll get this ended, is that one of the greatest things, and I said it earlier, of being introduced to other musicians is that one of the proudest things that I did, or what we can do collectively as a group, is that January live stream group, we had somebody from Germany, somebody from Ireland, somebody from the UK, at least 15 different states in the United States. We had somebody from Turkey. And those are the things that will help you as an artist, because what will happen is that if you're going to hopefully get a gig in LA, you're going to call me, but you're also going to call Willowcrest and say, hey, I have a show in LA, you know, and then you're going to do the exact same thing when they say, hey, I have a show in Seattle or Tacoma, where they're going to be able to sell 5 to 10, 15 tickets by just the word of mouth of like, Victoria's coming to LA. She's great. She's playing at the whatever, blah, 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 blah. Let's go get tickets and let's go support it. And you've already seen that of me trying to set those stages with Natalie and Iran and with Nadia. And I want to do that. And stuff like that is infectious. It really, really is that you start building community things and people are like, the support is love, and we're just going to do this. So cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it definitely makes you want to be a part of it and be more active, especially as a consumer and as an artist. So thank you so much, David.
No, thank you. Thank you. And I will do my famous. This has been a Beyond the Plateau podcast from High Plateau Productions, and it has been hijacked by Victoria. And we invite anybody that wants to, hijack one of our podcasts, and it doesn't even have to, I don't ever need to be interviewed, but if you want to interview someone else, we love these sort of things because it just, once again, builds a sense of community within the musicians that are out there. So Victoria, thank you for your time, and everyone out there, please be safe out there, and hopefully we'll see you at a live show really, really soon. So thank you much, and take care, and goodbye.
On nights like this, I reminisce those nights calling me. Us in the dark, drinking in the park, then a strange feeling.